Is everybody in? Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The ceremony is about to begin.
Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Me? Well, it turns out I'm a bit of a lightweight when it comes to emotions. After the tearful end to yesterday's show, I couldn't concentrate on anything at all. I kept playing the show over in my mind, hoping that I hadn't said anything inappropriate while discussing such a sensitive subject. And the fact that Gail Cresswell took the time to thank me when she is still grieving over the loss of a loved one. It was a lot to take. I'll tell you how bad it was. When the show was over, I had a sudden craving for some comfort, and comfort always comes in the form of bacon. So I strolled on down to my local cafe, ordered myself a bacon roll and a cup of tea, and both of them went cold while I was sat staring out the window, still playing the show over in my mind. I do really hope that the families of the Didcot 4 get some resolution soon. I honestly don't want to do another show like that on the 23rd of February 2024. Now, today's show is going to be rather different than our usual fare, as you probably gathered from the unusual intro. And as it stands at the moment, it's going to be even more different than that because the guest that I'm awaiting hasn't actually arrived yet, but I can fudge for a while. It probably won't be quite as emotional as yesterday's show, although it is going to be quite emotive as we're talking about the subject of the mental health crisis that seems to have targeted the UK demolition and construction industry. Earlier this week, the Home Builders Federation hosted a mental health in construction reception at Parliament. Among those in attendance was Steve Kerslake of Construction Sport, who's been on the show in the past, and Andy Stevens, who has been on the show before and who is about, hopefully, to make a very welcome return. I do have some video content just in case he doesn't turn up, but I'm hoping he does. I think we agreed on about 10:10, so I'm fairly sure that we can fudge until then. So, as this is such an important subject, I've put all the usual adverts and videos into temporary storage to clear the way for a full and frank discussion. So, if you have any thoughts on the subject of mental health in the construction industry, if you've suffered or are suffering yourself, please know that you're among friends. You're free to discuss if you wish. If you are concerned over the mental health of a colleague, then feel free to share that too, although probably best if you don't name them. And if you have any suggestions on how the industry can tackle the mental health and suicide crisis, we would love to hear from you. There is no question of the day today, as we'd like to. I just thought that would get in the way. So while we're waiting for the stragglers, and while I drag Andy into the green room and away from the free coffee, I'm going to go and see who is celebrating a birthday on this day of days, and then I'm going to get into the chat while we're waiting for Andy to arrive. Bear with me for 1 second because I need to play this. Happy birthday! Yes, it's many happy returns to Wilhelm Grimm, you know, the one with the fairy tales, and to Manfred Mann singer Paul Jones. Happy birthday also to Sweeney actor Dennis Waterman, comedy cricketer Derek Randall, if you know, you know, Formula One star Alain Prost, actors Ben Miller and Billy Zane, and to comedian Mitch Hedberg, to boxer and walking ego Floyd Mayweather Jr., should I say, and Aussie tennis star Leighton Hewitt. But far more importantly, today actually marks the birthday of a man who transformed our very lives and without whom my desk would look very, very different indeed. Apple founder, Mr. Steve Jobs. Many happy returns to them, one and all. Yeah, it looks like I've got my timings a little bit wrong, so I may have to go over to some of the other bits and pieces before Andy arrives. But let me go through the chat very quickly. Ken Hatch is here. Morning, Ken. Thank you for being here. And yes, Steve Williamson, it's Friday. Doesn't come around quite quickly enough, does it? Love the new intro. That's actually our Saturday social intro. Just so you know, I dig it out every once in a while. Normally, as you well know, we normally play the headlines of 4 of the stories that we're going to be highlighting. There are no stories today, so there you are. Gary Newhead says, good morning, Mark. Good morning, everybody. TFIF. I think we all know what that means. Let's have a look. Mark Whiting's in the house as well. Morning, Mark. And Jim Turner says, morning, peeps. Yes, morning to you as well. Why is Friday so close to Monday, but Monday is so far from Friday? You know, I've never thought about it quite like that, but you're absolutely right. Steve Williamson says you did a great show yesterday. Thank you very much indeed. Very emotional, but you did a great job. Yeah, it really was. As I say, I'm not in any way, shape, or form an emotional type, but yesterday did get under the skin somewhat. Al Grison's here as well. Morning, Al. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Gary Muirhead, Saturday social intro. Yes, just to ring the changes. Ken Hatcher, yes. Where's Neil got? Neil is currently off sick. Cut a long story short, he phoned me a couple of weeks ago to say that he was off sick, and I think he's actually signed off for a full month. So I'm not entirely sure when we're expecting him back, but hopefully with the end of the month now, very, very much in view. Hopefully Neil will be back very, very soon, so that we can actually get things. Now, I've had a message here from Andy Stevens who says, "Seem to be in. You're not in here." I'm not sure where you are in, but you're not in here. I realise this is not the usual way of doing things, but if you have a look in the chat now, Andy, there is the link for the show. Please give that a check out. Click the button when you can, or copy and paste that, and that should get you into the show. Morning, Steve says, Gary Muirhead. Can you invite me in as the link doesn't work? I've just done that, Andy, so hopefully you should pop up on my screen anytime now. So while we're waiting for Andy to actually check in, yesterday, those fine folks at Brown & Mason carried out one of their latest blasts. So let me play that for you right now. I've got nothing to tell you about it because I haven't written a script for it. I'm just fudging until our guest arrives. So here's the video. Yeah, you can tell we're fudging somewhat. Didn't even have a chance to get music on that one. Let's have a look. Had a message here from Steve Williamson. Did you like the behind-the-scenes pictures I sent the other day? Myself and Ed wanting to post one of them, if okay with you. Please feel free. Feel free. I'm not precious about these things. Feel free. Knock yourself out. Stevie, it'll be like a kid on Christmas morning when you get on that plane. Yeah, can hardly wait. Funnily enough, my wife is currently sat in bed looking at restaurants. I've just had a message come in via. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a slight issue here. So what is the best way to do this? Now, I need to get a link over to Andy Stevens, and I'm not entirely sure how to do it from here. Sorry, everyone, could you just bear with me for a second? I'm just trying to figure out how to get this invite to Andy. I tell you what, Andy, if you go and have a look at your LinkedIn, I'm going to message it to you right now. My apologies. This is entirely my fault. I normally tell people to arrive about 10 minutes early. I didn't do that with Andy, and I should have done. So, Andy, you should be seeing that link in your LinkedIn messages right about now, my friend. Yeah, I hope you can hear me loud and clear, Andy. I think those messages have crossed in the air. Where is the link, Mark? It's in your LinkedIn messages. So we are talking about all things mental health today. But I think we're also going to be touching on things like the mental health crisis. I don't need to fudge any longer because the man of the moment has arrived. Morning, Andy. Can you hear me, Andy?
Good morning, Mark.
There we go.
Apologies, it's technology.
It's technology and an idiot behind the camera. That's what it is.
Yeah, there's one here.
Me, not you. Now, Andy, the last time I saw you, you were in a house that you were renovating. This week, you've been in a house of a very different type, haven't you?
Yes, we had I suppose, a discussion at Houses of Parliament organised by Home Builders Federation, looking at raising mental health awareness. Now, there were certain, excuse me, there were certain key speakers, which we are getting there with what's being done for mental health in construction, but I don't think we're getting anywhere near where we need to be. There were several charities in the room, most of which I know I've either worked with or will be working with. And I do think they seem to be, so government, judging by the MPs that were there, and a couple of charities, are judging success of mental health awareness by how many mental health first aid courses are sold. Now, in my opinion, as you rightly know, the real figures, according to ONS, Office of National Statistics, construction workers' suicides in the UK and Ireland, the latest figures are 507 per year. Now, there's a lot of other figures being thrown about of 2 a day, 2 every working day, 500, 700. They're the figures that we have to go on. Now, I think, as we're all aware, it's probably a lot more than that, but I think we need to look at the honest figures. And actually, the big thing that I took away from this, Mark, is a lot of people are saying stuff that isn't actually happening. Now, the big thing for me is all charities, federations, councils, bodies, government have to pull together, forget how big your balls are, who wants to wave the flag, I did this. We need to work together to find a solution and a way forward. Because at the moment, people are just banging heads because they want to take the glory.
There's a couple of things I want to pick up on with that, Andy. You said there is progress being made, but 507 people as a possible number committing suicide doesn't feel particularly successful. And I guess the other point is there is that expression: if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. If we're still in the position where we don't actually know the real figures, what possible hope do we have of actually rectifying the situation?
Well, you're right. It's like the COVID figures. Let's not get into that. But, what was the real figure? And I think, suicides in construction, we know is worse than any other industry, has been for years, and unfortunately still is, and it's getting worse. The real figure, all we can go on at the moment is the ONS figures, which is over 500. But we do know it's higher. The big concern for me is when you are told by very senior people in the industry that the mental health awareness is working well, it's being a success, is bollocks, because this is people's lives. We're not selling shoes or holidays or hammers or whatever else. This is people's lives. One a year is one too many, let alone hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So the big thing you said, Mark, was we can't put a price on it. And what we mean by that is things such as prelims, HSE, all the other factors in this can't put something into a spreadsheet, if you like, to say we need to put this down as a cost because there's no money to be made from it. That is a big sticking point.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, we've had a question in which kind of preempts a question I've got myself. Why are all the charities making all the effort without government funding? But I was also going to ask, you mentioned the fact that there was a bunch of charities there. And one of the things that strikes me, and I'm sure they're all well-meaning and they have their heart in the right place. But ever since we started talking about all things mental health in construction, we do seem to have had and be inundated with charities. Are they all working together? Is there a common bond and a common target, or is everybody going off in different directions?
Great question. We all know what we would like the answer to be. I can safely say, having worked with in the past and now several charities and parts of government, Ford have been working on a concept called Make It Visible. I shot the ad for them, when was it, about 18 months ago in central London. The whole concept was all construction charities to work under this umbrella. So if one charity can't help, another one can. We all know where to go as construction workers. We go to this Make It Visible umbrella with Ford supporting it, And there's all the charities sitting under that, so we can get help for what we need, if it's mental health, physical health, financial health, or something else. However, despite what everyone's telling you, all these charities are not working together. I won't go into details on this. I've had the legal training from the radio show and the TV work. There's a lot of charities that are clashing. Now, anybody can look up the names. I don't have to preempt anything. You know, you've got the Lighthouse Club, you've got Mates in Mind, you've got Band of Builders, you've got Construction Sport, Samaritans, the list goes on. Now, to make this work, the senior people of these charities have to sit round a table together. And what really bugged, let's say, 2 other charities. Now, I've got the document here that we were given, which is what, I don't know, half a dozen pages. Now, on page 4, there's a double page spread in old money on the Lighthouse Club, which is obviously the construction industry charity that I worked for a couple of years. And bearing in mind, there's lots of other charities also doing good work. Now, it says here, and I'll read it, this is the opening paragraph: the construction industry charity, the Lighthouse, the only charity that provides emotional, physical, financial wellbeing support to the construction community and their families. You can imagine the response from the other charity founders and CEOs being told they don't exist. And this is the problem. All these charities need to put all the past behind them, forget they're leading this venture, make it visible campaign, whatever it is, and work together. Until we get all these charities around the same table, this isn't going to work.
We just had a comment here from Gavin Crane, who I'm guessing knows you, trying to do that, Andy. I'm not entirely sure.
So Gavin Crane is the CEO of the Band of Builders charity, which is a fantastic charity. Basically, what they do is wonderful work. They have volunteer tradespeople all across the country that go in and improve people's homes. So, you know, if someone has an accident at work and needs the garden levelling because they're in a wheelchair, for example, they do this. They have big donations from Jewson's and many other big brands. Wonderful charity. Gavin is working tirelessly to get everybody together, and he's doing a bloody good job. I sat with him at a trade fair last year and had a chat. We speak on the phone, and obviously I was with him at Parliament a couple of days ago. But we all need to do this together, and Gavin, Steve from Construction Sport, who was there, myself, many others, all saw the same problem. We're being told this by some charities, but it's not happening.
I mean, one of the things I find interesting, and I'm determined this isn't going to be let's knock the Lighthouse Club, because having been on the receiving end of the aid, not personally, but you know, having seen the work that the Lighthouse Club do in other areas, certainly a big fan of the Lighthouse Club. But I had Bill Hill of the Lighthouse Club on this show a few months back, and he was saying that one of the issues that they have is they are struggling to get their message down to grassroots level, because obviously the Lighthouse Club is funded by the industry, and it tends to be the industry directors and the senior directors that are doing that funding. So they're very aware of the Lighthouse Club. But it is the likes of Band of Builders, Mates in Mind, yourself, Steve Kerslake over at Construction Sport. It's you guys that are actually out in the muck and nettles at the grassroots level. Surely it plays to the Lighthouse Club to actually work alongside you guys.
You would hope so. Bill, his closing remark at the talk at the Houses of Parliament, which obviously we all heard, was we need to drop all the egos and get round the table. Now, I'm not here to say yes, no, disagree, agree. What I can say is that is what needs to be done, and it isn't being done. Gavin, Band of Builders, that's all he wants. Steve, Construction Sport, that's all he wants. Mates in Mind, Sarah, that's what she wants. We've got to get round the table as a collective group of individuals and charities. And at the moment, Gavin's working hard, Steve's working hard, many are working hard, but you can only go on people's response. When they're not picking the phone up, returning calls, there will be certain charities that won't be there.
We've had another question here from Gary Muirhead. What is Andy's advice on what we can do as individuals on site to help our colleagues' mental health and well-being? And I think there's so many layers to that question. Obviously, be aware and be, cognizant of what other people are going through. But I mean, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the answer would have been, why don't you consider doing mental health awareness training? I'm not I'm still not convinced that that is the fix.
It's a great question. Listen, these courses are a start. I've done them. Gary, are they that good? They're all right. I think my answer to your question, what can we do as individuals on site to help our colleagues with their mental health? The first thing I've always said is, I'm a trade. So when we get to work on a Monday morning, all right, mate, how you doing? Good weekend? Bang. You've actually asked how they are, but you've not actually listened to a response. They've probably not responded. If you go back and ask again, I think there's research, there's something like 80% 82%, you'll get a different answer. How are you? So that's quick, it's free, it's easy. Then the other thing is, we need to spend time being comfortable talking to each other. Now, the journey I had with my complex PTSD and the suicide attempt a few years ago, I've always said it's like an addiction. You will not ask for help until you realize you've got a problem. So if you see someone that's behaving differently, don't push them into talking, because they will clam up even more. Just let them be aware that you're there. Someone else is aware. So they're there when they want to talk. Somebody won't talk until they're ready. But I tell you what, once they do talk, it's like a floodgate. And the key thing is, don't feel you have to be qualified to listen. Because when I blurted out to a mate, when I was ready to talk, I didn't want him saying, right, go and see a doctor, go and see a psychologist, go and take antidepressants, I just wanted someone to talk to get it off my chest. And then once that starts, that's when the journey starts to getting help. And I think the key thing is, what we can do for colleagues is just, I know it sounds silly, just be nice. Now listen, tradespeople, we love a crack. We love a crack. We love winding each other up, and that cannot stop. I still think one of the best things that happened to me, we were doing some landscaping, front drive and side patio on a house, went into the house and speak to a customer, came back out, this was in the autumn, and no word of a lie, all the lads with me had completely covered my van in leaves. Still to this day, when I put the fan on for the heater, I get bits of leaf come out. To me, that's one of the funniest things ever. We do this job because we love it and we have fun, but we just need to look out for each other. And I think one thing I want to add quickly is, if someone's very loud and leery and fun and the wind-up merchant and he goes quiet, there's obviously something wrong. But it doesn't mean suddenly the ones that are maybe a little bit quiet start being the jokers, the funny ones. A lot of people come to work to escape problems at home. It could be financial, it could be problems with their partner, it could be problems with kids at school, it could be anything. So the big answer there, Gary, I think, is just be nice to each other and ask, how are you? And don't force for an answer. When we want to talk, we'll talk.
There's been some bits and pieces in the chat here, and I do want to get into all of it, because I think their questions are way better than mine. Steve Williamson says, what helped me with my mental health, because I was in a bad way a few years ago, believe it or not, is using tilt rotator GPS. It keeps my mind busy. Being in a machine alone can get your mind thinking and all sorts. I like to keep busy. I think that's, on the one hand, I see that as a positive. On the other side, if you are storing away problems, maybe not such a great idea.
Yeah, the big thing, we're all different. We're not machines. We all react differently to different environments. And I think we will all go to different places to help with our mental health. Funnily enough, I've just written a talk for, bizarrely, a pharmaceutical company that I'm starting to work with, because they've got ridiculous research proving that a lot of us trades go to booze, soft drugs, then hard drugs to null the pain, to escape the difficulties they're going through with mental health. Now, I did that, and this is why they wanted me to talk. I turned to booze, I turned to soft drugs, I turned to hard drugs, and it made things 100% worse. And that culminated me waking up in hospital bed with a kitchen knife. So it's an easy option. Don't do it. Oh, I can't afford a gym, I can't afford to eat healthy. There's different options that are free. It's free to walk out there and go for a walk in nature. If you live by a beach, if you live by woods, if you live by a park, go in and actually enjoy what's around you. Nature is beautiful. I've got a mad dog down there, which has been the best thing ever for me, because it forces to get me out. And she's obviously great as well. The other things, try and eat healthier, is fundamental research proving what you put in your body will make a big difference on your mental health. If you're eating shit all day, now don't get me wrong, we love a fry up in the calf. It's going to impact you eventually. So try and eat healthier. Not all the time, just some of the time. Other things which you can do, go for a run. If you want to join a gym, that was my release until I fell off a hop up and bust my hand. But join a gym, you have those chemicals released, you feel good. Or go for a run, go for a swim, talk to friends, meditate. There's lots of options. Just try not to do the easy thing, which is booze and drugs, because it makes things a whole lot worse.
I'm going to put this one up. I don't know who our Facebook user is. If you'd like to let us know, then please do. I know I'll get a lot of flack for this comment. You won't, or not here anyway. And this, I think, is the question that I would personally like answering. What, or if anything, is the underlying reason for all these suicides? Why is demolition and construction such a hotbed? And do we put it down to the climate we're in? Or is it just swept under the table? Too many charities running around in circles. Would it not be best to have a central one? Yeah, absolutely. But, I think there's been a lot of talk about the fact, 507 suicides or however many it is. Has anybody ever actually gone, and the reason for that is this? Why construction?
Well, I can vouch with various talks I've done up and down the country on small, medium, large sites and suppliers, so your national merchants and independents. I would say the last year to 18 months, I've spoken to over 4,000 trades face to face, from ground workers up to digger drivers, up to plumbers, up to decorators, right across the board, north and south. Now, the overriding few factors are the following, and anybody listening, if you agree or disagree, it's important we talk about this. Working away from home is tough. You can be scooted all around the country. You're going to miss your family and kids. We get knocked an awful lot. I do extensions and refurbs. I got knocked 23 grand on the last job because they could. They knew I couldn't face up taking them to court. Commercially, the payment terms are bollocks. Why should you wait 30, 60, 90, 120 days to get paid? We've got van and tool theft, which is being laughed at by the police because their caseloads are far too many. They haven't simply got the resource. We've also got, and this is a big one, on your big sites, your redevelopments, your new homes, your commercial buildings, your distribution centres, run by the big boys, ridiculous timeframes and pressures. You are asked to do something that really isn't possible done in a safe manner. You work to the bone and you're not looked after. Now, one example I'll give of this is a distribution centre up in the northeast, Cleveland, I think it was, that I saw last year. 540 trades on the job. Now, the site director, being polite, were told to me by most people I spoke to was a complete twat. His idea of looking after his staff, because he told me this to his face, he goes, I put a Christmas tree up for them. Now, what he did do was dismiss staff because he was under pressure to keep costs down and hit budget so he could get his bonus. The example was, and this is by one of the foremen that looked after the decorators, in the summer, hot day, 30-something degrees, all PPE to the hilt, walked over to the smoking area to have a cup of tea. 11 of them undid their chin strap on their hard hat. That's all. He came over, he fired a lot on the spot, didn't pay them. This is one of the big problems. For him to walk up and say, how are you? How's your week going? Do you have a good weekend? That doesn't cost a dicky bird. So they're the reasons I think construction is bad. Plus, it is male biased, it is changing, but it's still male heavy. And us men are pretty shit at talking at the best of times. Women are great.
And there's a couple of comments here that I think just basically echo what you just said. This is Ken Hatcher, nearly 40 years in construction, never heard of mental health. Lighthouse Club, yes. Normally on site, they just take the piss out of you. Best to keep quiet. And as Steve says, you're right, Ken. Sometimes if you talk about it to people, you get the likes of man up or get the piss ripped out of you. That's the thing we need to change, isn't it? Yeah,
that's a massive problem. It'd be interesting to hear from those two comments. Was that by colleagues or management? Probably both. It's a very old hat way. I mean, I've still worked with guys that, grow a pair, mate, sort yourself out. What are you talking about? It tends to be the older trades where mental health wasn't discussed as much a while ago. It still goes on. It still goes on. Sadly, from experience of what I've seen and heard, saying that to the wrong person could mean they do something silly. So it is old hat for some people. But we need to get that message out. It isn't just a question of growing a pair or man up. Apologies, Mark, you've gone quiet.
How's that?
Better.
Let me try that again. I'm going to say good morning to Claudio over in Brazil. Not entirely sure what you're getting out of the show, but I'm glad you're here anyway. Jim Turner says a noticeable change in anyone's behaviour usually means something's playing on their mind. Travelling in a van with someone is a good place for them to spill their troubles out. Yeah, totally agree with that. Although, funnily enough, ironically, during COVID, people were encouraged to go in vans on their own, weren't they? So, and I'm sure not just that, I'm sure COVID will have had an impact as well.
Can I just say, Mark, Jim's point there is superb. When you get your gangs travelling in the vans to and from work or picking up materials, that is where you get to know each other. And that is often where we get close as mates and talk about the weekend, talk about your troubles, talk about the football, whatever it is. And that is where somebody could very easily think, bloody hell, he's different. I wonder what's going on. So we've all got an element of responsibility to look at as well.
Mick Norton, morning Mick, said, what is the source of the figure of 507 suicides? I think that's ONS, isn't it?
It's Office of National Statistics, their latest figures, which I believe was end of last year. Not sure if it was November or December.
Yeah, and I think that was 2021 figures, wasn't
2021 figures, yes.
Yeah. Tim Gosden says there's too much pressure on people to earn money to pay for, and I'm going to come back to this in a second, for everything in modern day life. It causes horrendous problems. Facebook, TikTok, lifestyles. Don't be knocking the social media, because that's where me and Andy live. But keeping up with the Joneses, living unreal life expectations. Which kind of brings me to a question that I had standing by, actually. I watched your Instagram show the other day, and you were talking about the cost of living crisis. Just this morning, it's lovely where these things roll together. I've received details of a new study that suggests that almost 2 in 5, that's 39% of UK tradespeople, are working extra shifts or doing longer hours because of the cost of living crisis. And nearly a quarter say they can't afford to take days off. It goes on to say that more than 9 in 10 take less than the required amount of annual leave. On average, tradespeople are taking just 11 days off every year, and 26% of those surveyed admit that they go to work when they're feeling unwell. That's just piling upon the already deadly situation, isn't it?
The whole employment setup with construction is dated. It needs changing. 0-hour contracts, subbies, on contracts, overtime. It's backwards. And the other side of it, Mark, that we touched upon earlier, the fact that why should you have to wait months and months to get paid is dire. It's wrong. I think that I know an awful lot of people that I work with day in, day out that are struggling. We're all struggling. Everything's gone up from a loaf of bread. I mean, bloody chickens are on strike. You can't get chickens. Everything's going up. The cost of materials, let's not even talk about that. Is it profiteering? That's a discussion for another day. It's tough. The whole payment structure of construction is all over the place, and that is a major part of people's mental health problems, because let's be fair, us trades aren't great with money, never have been, and need a bit of help, not being told you've got to wait 90 days to get paid.
I'm going to throw this one up very quickly. Steve Williamson's back. The cost of living going up and up. The work, get paid to pay the bills, and then some people are left with nothing. Can get you down. I think that's, and you end up thinking, what's the bloody point? I've heard this many times from fellow workers. I'm just going to address this one very quickly. I think that's Mick. I can only see one comment on one viewer. There's more than that. I'm not entirely sure what's playing up with Facebook over there. I know I'm on my drug testing soapbox again, says Jim Turner, but I think regular testing would stop people heading down the slippery slope of self-abuse. The drink and drugs cause highs, which make the lows feel even darker than they need to be. If folk knew they could get away with it, they wouldn't start doing it.
Just one thing on that quickly, Mark, Jim's comment. The testing is beginning to become more regular, and everyone's going, oh, you can't do that. None of us will work because, all decorators are pissed and labourers are stoned, whatever the common silly comments are. The reality is you should not be at work if you're under the influence of anything. If you're a machine operator, if you're a labourer, if you're an electrician, whatever you are. but it's an easy option. How easy is it to go and get pissed? How easy is it to go and smoke a joint or do something stronger? It's an easy way out because it masks the pain. And I'm saying that from experience. However, as you rightly say, Jim, it gets a lot worse and makes things snowball. So please, if you are in a bad place, seek help, make a phone call. There's plenty of charities out there. Speak to your boss at work. They all have a duty of care for their staff.
I'm going to throw this one up from Ken Hatcher. As an example, off hire today, goodbye, never see you again. That's the way that workers are treated, isn't it?
Yeah, it's appalling. It's appalling. This stems back to how it's been for a long, long time. You go to big sites, the site directors, the management, all the suits in the porter cabins. You should not feel they're above you because we're all in this together. It doesn't matter what you're doing on a job. You want to get to the end result is to get it built on time, on budget, as safely as possible, looking after everybody. So that comes down to the federations, the councils. But there was a comment earlier about all the different charities bumping heads and federations. We've got too many. When I was at House of Parliament a couple of days ago, I was staggered the number of councils, bodies, boards, federations, government, charities. I'm 47. I've been doing this quite a while. I still haven't got a clue what half of them do. It's too many people trying to do it to say, look what I'm doing. I think we need to basically bring this all together under one umbrella. Where do we start on that? That's the $1 million question.
Is one of the problems within construction the fact that there are so many layers to the industry that effectively responsibility for this kind of thing falls between the cracks? I know you tend to work at the sort of the builder end rather than construction end. If you think about, I mean, you mentioned HS2 and stuff earlier. You look at that, there's a client, there's a main contractor, possibly a joint venture. There are subcontractors, there's specialist subcontractors, there's plant hirers, there's individual contractors, there's agency workers. And I think partly you've got the message about mental health is being lost in amongst all those cracks. But in addition to that, you've also got like that percolation down of pressure. The client wants it done yesterday, so shouts at the main contractor. Main contractor shouts at, and by the time it gets down to the individual agency worker, everything needs to be done 3 weeks ago or you're fired. Yeah. We've created this system ourselves, haven't we? We've
created it ourselves, but it's gone on too long. The framework, the structure that you just mentioned that happens all across the country is fundamentally wrong. We're not in 1970s. This is 2023. And in my opinion, we need to take a step back, not that any of the developers and house builders will do, because it means they'll be losing their bonus. Take a step back and actually put systems in place which is transparent and will make it a lot easier going into work. If you're a labourer, if you're an apprentice, up to the site director. And everybody in between. The layers, as you say, Mark, is how many other industries are like this?
None, as far as I know. None whatsoever. We're back to social media. What's your thoughts on social media?
Yes, Steve. Brilliant question. Brilliant question. Mark will probably tell you I had 2 months off social media. I came off just before Christmas. I've only just recently gone back on. What did I think of being off social media? Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Why did I go back on? It contributes towards paying the bills. I work with companies like Bosch and Wienerberger, and I'm contracted to work with them and post, which is fine. The problem with social media is, as Mark said earlier, or I think it might have been a comment, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. You're looking for people commenting positively about you and your work, family, etc. If you look at a lot of tradespeople on social media, there's a lot of narcissism. Look at me, I'm the best, I'm doing this. And you get all these quotes and all this sort of stuff. It can be very poisonous. And I think it is bad for your mental health. I think it should be used if you get positives from it or you learn stuff. Scrolling may not be that good for you. I'm sure there's research showing that, but I think social media can be very detrimental to your mental health, especially in construction.
And yet, conversely, and I'm not trying to defend Twitter and what have you, because of this show, we've got a community around this. We've got a WhatsApp group off to one side, and we all chat amongst ourselves. So my guess is that's a slight positive. It's not quite the same as being face to face and putting your arm around somebody's shoulders, but we're all talking amongst ourselves.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. I should have said, obviously, there are a lot of positives. you meet some wonderful people, you form groups, you form alliances, you get work from it. There are a lot of positives, but it can have negatives. And I think if you're starting to feel down or your mental health suffering, maybe just pull off it for a bit.
We're going to go into some muddy waters now. I'll let Mick lead us in. The trade unions have a Luddite approach to dealing with drugs and alcohol abuse within construction, claiming that individuals should not be disciplined for offending as it might blacklist them. Madness. All of which leads me to a question that I had. We have a situation at the moment that we currently have rail workers, nurses, teachers, postal workers on the strike. And they're on strike over money. Now, I know money is important. I know it puts food on your table and a roof over your head and everything else. But they are striking over money. Here in construction, we have 507 people dying, and yet we don't take to the streets. We don't protest. We don't hold placards. We just get back to work, which I guess is the nature of construction. I'm not suggesting for one moment we all take to the streets, but why don't we? Why do we just take this lying down?
I don't think, I'm not an expert on this, Mark, but it's crossed my mind. What would the site directors, what would the board directors do, these big companies, big house builders, if suddenly there was nobody at work? I think because we don't have necessarily, we're not all part of unions. There's a lot of tradespeople. I don't know what the number is in the UK. If anyone can point me in the right direction, I think it's around the million mark. There's a lot of people to organise to strike, and without the right unions and bodies in place, it would be quite difficult to organise that. But you're right. I totally agree that the teachers, the rail workers, the nurses should be on way more money. What work they do is incredible. And then you look at, the higher echelons of their industry that are on ridiculous millions and millions and millions. It's wrong.
Had another one from Steve, long one this. I had a ground worker with me one day. I knew there was something wrong as he was on his phone a lot, throwing stuff about. I stopped the digger and went to ask him if everything was okay. I knew how it can affect you while sitting with him for 10 minutes. Told me it does a great job. Changed the subject. He perked up and was okay. It only took 10 minutes to just stop and let him know I was there if he needed someone to speak to. It's hard to know how to approach people. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, actually. I know I sort of poo-poo the idea of mental health awareness, mental health first aiders and that kind of thing. But I think being attuned to, what your fellow workers are like. I mean, even like you say, just checking on their mood. This is usually the life and soul of the party. And he hasn't said a word for the first 2 hours we've been at work. That's a sure sign, isn't it?
It's a sure sign. And I think it's, do you really need these courses? I think it's common sense. If someone's mood, personality changes from quiet to loud, from loud to quiet, or whatever, then something, as Steve just said, that was a classic example. All he did was go and speak to that guy for 10 minutes. Now, that guy may have not told him everything. You don't know how good or bad he was, what place he was in mentally. But what Steve did there is giving him an olive branch saying, listen, mate, if you want to chat, I'm here. You're doing a cracking job. And that's another thing. That's another thing that is not done enough. You do not hear senior management, site directors, whatever, going up to their boots on the ground going, what a week. You've been brilliant this week. Well done, mate. That's all you want to hear. It doesn't happen enough.
You've timed that perfectly because Gary Muirhead just said exactly the same thing. I think there's not enough praise on site, like good job, well done. It goes a long way instead of crap all day. Yeah, precisely.
We're not greedy. We don't want them to turn up with a bloody great, bonus every week. That's not the way we are. We graft hard. We enjoy it. But the classic example, when I did, can't remember which show it was, it might have been Home Building Renovating or UK Construction. The hotel I was staying in was overlooking Excel. 10 o'clock at night, there must have been 20-something ground workers out there on plants, digging holes under crappy lighting, freezing cold, pouring with rain. And I thought, I wonder how many people have been out there to ask them if they're right, if they want a cup of tea, a biscuit, a chat. Bet there was none. And that doesn't cost anything. So you don't have to worry about putting that on your bottom line if any site directors management are watching.
I'd like to think they are. Mick Saunders just said, I agree it's an easy way out. We all know drink or drugs is not the way, but as men, we are scared to say we have problems. Just don't want to admit it. Ridicule on site or is something no one wants. Too many blokes want to show the hard side of themselves. And as Steve Williamson, I think, says, construction is a tough, hard place. It absolutely is.
It's a tough, hard place. And as Gary says there, you can sit in your tin cans all day. You can work on your own on smaller sites. If you're a decorator, spark, plumber, whatever, you can be on your own, which can be tough. Some people like working on their own, but it is a tough environment. The other thing is as well, and I've heard this from a lot of people up and down the country, trades-wise, you don't want to let on you're struggling because you're probably going to get dismissed. Now, whoever is dismissing you, you are scum. That is not what you do. If someone's struggling, you have a duty of care. If they're direct staff, subcontractor, subcontractor, you have a duty of care to look after them. And I think we've got to get that right, where so many people are afraid to show that they're struggling because they're going to get dismissed. That is a massive problem, Mark.
And that, it's an interesting one, that, because that's come up in a different context in the past, where you have like rookie operators arriving on site, and maybe, you know, they've just got their competence card. Maybe they're not as good as the guy that's had 20, 30 years behind the levers, but they're struggling to keep up. And the industry standard is, no, he's not good enough. Get somebody else in. You know, these are people. You know, and I keep coming back to this. You know, these figures, the 507. I think 504 of those were young men. Yes. And we are talking about young men, and you know, I mean, I'm older than you. You're a younger guy than I. But, you know, when you think about what a young guy is, you know, possibly got his first house, rented or bought, possibly engaged or married, possibly got a first child. So you've got all of that pressure at home. And then you're constantly running the risk. If I do something wrong, I'm out the door with a boot up my ass. You know, I don't even know how people go to work with that kind of pressure on them.
But this is the problem. A lot of people go to work to get away from that stress. And I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, Mark. It was probably 3 years ago, the digger driver in Liverpool with the Travelodge. Now, that was when I had a radio show, and a mate of mine was nearby. He called in and said, look, this guy's just torn into a Travelodge with a digger and smashed to pieces and caused millions of pounds worth of damage. Now, I remember saying on air live, there's something more to it than this. You don't just do that. We found out, it was then put in the press, that he hadn't been paid, and that was the tipping point. It wasn't just the only reason. He'd been asking the NHS for 6 months for help with his mental health. He was in a really bad place. That was the trigger that pushed him over the edge. Now, I think, we were talking about the other day, we think he got about 7 years. Now, he won't come out of the nick, unfortunately. He needs some, you know, one-to-one help there. It's a lot of pressure at work. And again, Mike, you said earlier about the framework of different layers. It's also the environment we work in. And in order to get youngsters into this brilliant industry, because it is, we need to change this. Now, I don't know what the latest figures were, 382,000 shortage in the next few years of skilled labour. Well, that's going to get a whole lot worse. That's going to get a whole lot worse because there's a lot of people retiring. There's a lot of people retraining for other industries. And we've got no youngsters coming in. And that is going to hit everybody in the pocket because it's going to cost a fortune to get bloody plumber out to fix your tap.
Now is not the time for semantics or trying to appease anyone. You just said something there about the guy, and I realised he wasn't a suicide. He just attacked a Travelodge. But you mentioned the fact that he had issues at home, and you said that a couple of times. On that basis, when we're talking about these 507, are these 507 construction suicides, or are they 507 suicides that happen to be among construction workers? You know, has anybody ever actually figured out construction is the cause, or let's face it, construction employs a lot of people. It's not just a case of the averages suggest that, you know, we will have that, because we're nearly at 4 times the national average, aren't we?
The research I've done, the figures I've seen, the 507 is UK and Ireland construction workers. So cause of death, suicide, and then they obviously, you know, work in construction. There's as we said right at the beginning of the show, Mark, there's an awful lot of people that aren't included in that. And I think from just people I've met, spoken to, seen, people that have messaged me, I think it's well into the thousands, sadly. I think it's at least double, probably treble that. The big thing we need to do, therefore, is just start getting together and talking, because the point earlier about grow, repair, man up, sort yourself out, son, I think that is the older generation, and that is hopefully coming to an end soon. But we've got a lot of responsibility to do things, and this is where we said right at the beginning, forget egos, forget who's got the biggest pair of bollocks. Look what I'm doing. Let's get together and work on this, because every year they get worse. Numbers speak for themselves.
My feeling on this, we have been aware of this situation for quite some time. 4 or 5 years, I think I've been reporting on this on a fairly regular basis. So it's we all know it. We get the regular virtue signalling social media posts from the major contractors. We're mentally health aware and all that kind of thing. But ultimately, nothing's being done. Personally, I think we need some sort of legislation in place. But, as Mick Norton has just said, with government construction ministers lasting an average of 7 months, what chance of the sector being taken seriously? Because every time you change a construction minister, you're back to square one, aren't you?
Well, it's not just changing them. It's the fact that you look at construction ministers and housing ministers. I mean, I've lost count of how many of those clowns are coming and going. But look at their responsibility. The clue's in the title: housing minister, construction minister. Then look at their experience. So the latest housing minister, I can't remember her name. She's been in the job, 3 weeks or something. Her background is IT and software. How long is she going to last? She hasn't got a clue. It's like putting me in a court of law representing a murderer. I wouldn't have a clue. I think this is where the right people have got to do these jobs, not some mate you went to Oxford or Cambridge with, and next thing you're going to be the culture secretary, next thing you're going to be someone else. I think we've got to get the right people doing these jobs. And I've always said the best people are the people that have worked on the ground.
Lots of comments here, but I've got to go to this one. I don't want to say this is Mick Saunders, but a few years ago, one of my sons hung himself. I fell to pieces, and I knew I had to get off site in case it affected others. I came back to work a couple of days later, and I could feel people wanted to say something, but I shut them out and got on with it. It was the way I was brought up. You kick things to yourself and just get on with it. I know Mickey's. He's retired now, so he is one of the industry's sort of tough old veterans. But that is the way. But Mick, I had no idea that you'd been through that. So my deepest condolences on that. I'd be interested to know if your son actually worked in the industry.
Can I just say, Michael? Please. First of all, so sorry to hear that. But secondly, it's very brave of you to come onto a public forum and actually say that. Everybody deals with grief in a different way. My partner lost her dad recently. We buried him on Monday. And she's speaking to a counsellor because, you've got anger, you've got sadness, you've got disconnection. There's all sorts of ways of dealing with it. I think, as I was about to ask what age you were before Mark said you're retired. And I think that, yesteryear, you're the hardened veteran of construction, and that's how you were taught to deal with it. Keep it on, crack on, tough old lad. But that is where people are, I use the analogy of if you boil a kettle and keep your finger on it, it's going to go pop eventually. And whatever your emotions are internally, if you keep them in and it can come out in getting pissed or getting angry or getting in a tear up at the pub, whatever it is, you're going to go pop. And I just think we've got to start being a bit more open and honest. And I really feel for you. I can't imagine what you went through, but I thank you for coming on a public forum like this and actually saying that, because it might just help somebody else that's watching.
Morning, Steve. Your mate Steve Kerslake has just pitched up. Gents, hats off for this open, honest conversation. It's the only way, isn't it? I don't think you can address this situation behind closed doors. And while I'm hats off to you guys for actually going up to Parliament and everything else. This is a public thing. There's a million plus people out there that are being impacted by this day in, day out.
But the thing is, Mark, yes, it is massive. It's starting to come to Parliament, like Days the other day. The media are talking about it more. But there's one thing holding it back, and that's openness and honesty. And, with the chief exec of the Home Builders Federation, Stuart Baisley, thank you for setting it up and inviting us all. But again, he was obviously only read what he was being told. And, he was saying 2 a day, which is 700 and something, which is way more than it was. And, I know who started that figure because I had an email from them. And I don't think that's going to help by fudging figures to try and get a gain out of it, which is what it is. We've just got to put the egos to a side. And, there is an opportunity coming up where maybe I will be able to say this in a public forum because I want to do good. I want to get these numbers down, as does Steve, Gavin, yourself. We've got to get these suicide numbers down because at the moment they're going up, and we've got to put all these egos aside and get around a table together because at the moment it's just people clashing heads and it's bollocks.
You had your reception at the Houses of Parliament. Was there any action points put in place? Are you scheduled to meet again in 6 months' time to report back, or was this just a government thing where you all get together, you say some nice words, and then go back to doing exactly what you were doing before?
I'm really pleased you asked that question, Mark. I was hoping there would be action points or a follow-up meeting, someone taking minutes, maybe circulating it to people that attended or people that want to read them. In reality, it was basically, I'll read it here. This is what we got given. Home Builders Federation, obviously thank you to them for setting this up. Increase in mental health awareness in home building, sponsored by an MP. The reality was there was 2 speakers from memory. Obviously the CEO and then Bill Hill from the Lighthouse. No questions, which I think was wrong because we need to ask questions to use all the experience in the room to move stuff forward. And in terms of an agenda or any follow-up, zilch. The speakers did their thing, had a cup of coffee and left. How many MPs were there? Don't know. It's not compulsory. They pop in if they want to. Was it a tick box exercise? I'll let you guys guess that, but I think I know where I'd vote. But
that is just typifies the situation, doesn't it? It's like mental health awareness. I keep coming back to this because I think I'm awfully clever having drawn the comparison. It's mental health awareness is the same as risk awareness. I've identified a risk. I haven't done anything about it, but I've identified it. I can now spot the fact that somebody is struggling for mental health. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not there to sort of take them off to the Samaritans or the Lighthouse Club or take them for a walk with Steve Kerslake from Birmingham to London or whatever it might be. But I'm aware that's not actually moving the needle at all, is it?
I think the worrying thing was we were told it was a success because of the number of mental health first aid courses sold. A success is seeing suicide numbers drop, people talking more, less people signed off with mental health problems, less people being chucked on antidepressants, which, again, it's the easy option for doctors. Pharmaceutical companies make an awful lot of money out of that. I've been on them 8 bloody years. I'm actually coming off them because they're just destroying me. It's not always the right option. We need to take a step back and look at simple things that don't cost money. Sleeping better, more exercise, eating healthier, talking more. None of this costs money, but according to all these events, it's a success. I don't think it is.
You just mentioned sleeping better. The industry starts at dawn, doesn't it? So that's one thing. So even if you are living at home and you're working close by, you are up as the sparrow farts first thing in the morning. You're getting home late at night. But a lot of people are working away from home for prolonged periods. So you're away from your GP, you're away from your spouse or your partner, you're away from your friends, you're basically away from your support network. Surely that is the bit that the industry should be addressing rather than tick boxes and annual social media posts saying we are mentally health aware. Yeah,
totally. Working away is not good. You're not all the time, but a lot of the time you're in a shitty travel lodge. It's not comfortable. You're eating crap if you eat at all, rather than having half a dozen pints. It's not good. And I think that needs to change. There is a company, and apologies, I've forgotten their name. I think it's Trade Stays, it might be. But basically a company have come up with a concept where they're working with people, if you like, with an Airbnb, something similar, where let's pick a number, 10 trades are working on a job away, and they stay in a house where they can cook together and be together rather than in a crappy room on their own in a travel lodge. But again, it's individuals coming up with these ideas, not government, councils, federations and bodies. What are they actually doing?
Good question. Going back to the working away, when I was in a bad place, there's Steve Williamson. I worked offshore on drilling. I was up the tower with a lot happening at home many years ago. The moment I realised I needed help was when I thought, if I jump off here, that's it, done. No more problems. If it wasn't for my fellow roughneck, I would not have been here today. Working offshore when you're struggling and when there's problems at home, pretty much the worst thing you could possibly be doing, I would have thought.
100%. I think, no matter what's going on, if you're not there face to face with your partner or kids or family or friends, there's not a lot you can do. Do you know that it's very brave of him again to say that. I think we talk about booze, we talk about drugs as being a mask, a plaster to look after that pain, take it away. And as he rightly said, sorry, I can't remember who said that, but
that was
you do
Steve.
think that. There we go, Steve. I thought that, and being completely open and honest, the reason I didn't do a proper job is because I saw my kids' two faces. Now, the weird thing was I hadn't taken any booze or drugs, but I don't remember any of it. And when I came around in the hospital bed, they asked me if I'd taken anything, and I said no. They did blood tests. They proved that I hadn't anything in my system. And I said, why do I not remember anything? And they said, your body completely shuts down to prevent you doing it properly, for a better word. But it crosses your mind. And that's what we got to do, is get to these people before you get to that stage, because it seems once you've done your booze and drugs, it seems an easy way out because you don't want to suffer. And talking of suffering, I, as you know, Mark, played a lot of rugby. I was very lucky to see the world. I had 14 operations, 92 stitches in my face, abused as a child, kicked to shit. But I'd rather have all that physical pain than the mental pain, because the mental pain was 100 times worse. And that is what people don't understand. So if you're working away, doing that on your own, that's tough. Very tough.
Going to go back to Mick Saunders. Sorry I said it, Mark. I've no need to apologise whatsoever. I never have spoken about this to anyone, just meant as a point. It was like that years ago. But Gary Muirhead has followed that up. Sorry to hear for your loss, Mick. And Mick says, thank you for your kind words. Peter McKenna, he's here. Now, Peter McKenna is a good example, actually, of the industry in which we live. Peter has an artificial foot. Not that that's got anything whatsoever to do with mental health, but Peter was sent by an agency to go and start work at HS2 about 2 weeks ago, I think. He got there, was very open about the fact that he had an artificial foot, now, despite the fact that he's got 20, 30 years under his belt, but was told, first and foremost, he needed a separate risk assessment because of his artificial. I know, your face says it all. And then he was told that he would need a separate medical, and ultimately he was basically kept there the entire day before being sent home, unpaid, although he ultimately got paid. And his agency, when he went back and queried this, the agency that he was working for basically blocked his number and told him to go and find somebody else to work for. That there is this industry that we work in. And that was 2 weeks ago.
And these agencies have got a lot to answer for. I don't have a huge amount of experience directly with them, but I speak to an awful lot of people that do. And that is horrendous. Whoever that agency is are appalling and should be ashamed. And that is something else that we've got to get sorted. The agencies, the way they treat people, as we've just heard then, I mean, that is dire. That is awful, awful.
And particularly when you think about the circumstances, we discussed this with Peter when he came on the show a couple of weeks ago. The major contractors back in my day, when I first started in this industry, somebody like Balfour Beatty would have employed literally thousands, possibly even tens of thousands of people directly.
Yeah.
To get them off their books, to allow them to, ride the peaks and troughs of demand and everything else, they've pushed them into self-employment and through agencies. Agencies don't do this for the love of the job. They do it because they are making money out of it. And going back to the fact that we've got a cost of living crisis where people are struggling, even if you can find tomatoes in the shop, you can't afford to buy them. If we weren't paying a lump to an agency, maybe we could. And yet, we have created a system whereby, we've been architects of our own downfall, and the people that are suffering from that are the people down on site, aren't they?
We've created a lot of things which aren't good, as we talked about earlier. The different layers of structure on a job, the agencies. The industry needs a massive shake-up, Mark. It really does. I still sit here and say it's the best industry you can be in. I started off as a teenager labouring, worked like mad in Sydney. Christ, that was hard. And, I'm 47 now and luckily moving, still on the tools, but obviously doing a lot of broadcasting now. And how many other industries can you move sideways and look at other things? People go on to be college tutors or project managers. It's a brilliant industry, but I think the reason is we're so big, Mark. What I did, depending on research, 9-10% of GDP, millions of people employed, industries worth billions and billions. We need to kind of take a step back and restructure the day-to-day running of it, because as you say, I mean, these agencies, they don't just earn money, they earn a bloody fortune. It's unbelievable.
Quickly going to say this, Gary Muirhead, like I said yesterday, this show is like therapy. It is for me. It is for me as well. I get to air my dirty laundry as well. Mick Norton says the construction sector is littered with directors, managers, supervisors who are appointed into positions of authority often above their ability. How can these people ever be able to identify a worker's feeling of isolation, loneliness, loss of self-esteem, or suicidal tendencies? A good point. We are, as an industry, told, don't think, just do. I think you were going to say something on Mick Norton's point there.
Yeah, he's hit the nail on the head. You've got these youngsters that are pushed into these areas of responsibility and they're at the depth. That puts them under pressure because they're desperately trying to impress the superior that's put them in this high position, probably on a whacking great salary. They don't know what they're doing. You look at these directors and supervisors, they're under massive pressure, but if they're at their depth and they don't know what they're doing, it's going to be even worse. And what's going to happen? They're going to pass that on to the people under them, which is the boots on the ground. Gee, I mean, the more we talk about this, the more it does seem as though we've got to put the brakes on and take a step back, Mark.
Your friend Gavin Crane is back. I agree. We can't measure success on number of mental health first aiders we have. We can't measure what difference they make. Most people I speak to won't seek help from a mental health first aider on site.
Well, this is it. It's back to what you said earlier. Somebody commented about being in the van on the way to work. Most vans, driver plus 2 in the cab, they're the ones that are going to hear or probably be spoken to way before a mental health first aider. As I rightly comment, and I'll keep saying this, you'll only talk when you're ready to talk. You're not going to risk your job, which a lot of them will think they're doing, by going to a mental health first aider /HR/health and safety, whoever. I'd love to know who came up with these mental health first aid courses, and looking at it as a success. Gavin's got it spot on there.
But I mean, we've just mentioned the agencies that are drawing a fortune. We now have training companies offering mental health awareness courses who are also basically feeding off the misery of people in the industry. It's an absolute bloody disgrace. It really is. It's
money talks. You've got these courses, and people are saying the amounts that are being made off these courses, it's just wrong, man. That's another conversation for another day, Mark. Jesus.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to go. We're almost at the end of the comments, although somebody will say something in a minute. Steve Williamson. Steve, so you know, Andy, Steve he's not long back from Germany, where he was a demonstrator at the Baumer exhibition, and he and I, not together. Well, we are going together, but we're not together, if you know what I mean. We are off to Las Vegas in a couple of weeks' time. So look at his life now. People probably think, what a great life, but things still haunt me. And I've never opened up on social media, and doing podcasts like Mark, I could maybe help just tell my story. Yeah, tell your story.
Do you know what? Sorry to interrupt, Mark, but telling your story, if it's a mate down the pub, if it's Mark on the plane to Vegas, whatever it is, is therapy in itself, and it costs nothing, and you don't have to be afraid to go into something you're not comfortable with. Talking about it, I promise you from personal experience, makes a huge difference. You are taking that inner trauma, that hurt, and getting it out. I'm not saying it's going to solve it, cure it, make it 100% better, but if people start talking more, it is the pressure release valve, as I call it, and it does make a huge difference.
And
Long flight to Vegas, Mark.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I may have created a bit of a monster here, but one of the things, I spoke about this on my Instagram Live earlier this week. My former business partner killed himself a few years back. So I've seen it up close. I know exactly what it looks like. And one of the issues I had there was we had some financial issues, which were tiny. I mean, I'll be absolutely honest. We each owed the bank 18 grand, which, 18 grand, you get a bank loan for that, or you could back when this happened. So not a big deal at all. But because he was in such a dark place, he escalated it and magnified it to the point where he told his wife that he was in debt to the tune of 150 grand. And then he killed himself. The crazy thing with that was if he'd have stuck around for another 3 months, not only would we have had the 18 grand, but the business was back. I mean, for the first 5 years that the business was in operation, we doubled our turnover every single year. Every single year, just got bigger and bigger. We had a slump, he died, and then it took off again. If we'd have stuck around for 3 months longer, and going back to what Steve was saying there, whether you find doing a podcast cathartic or whatever it might be, there might be somebody looking at you and thinks, if I could just work that little bit harder or get a bit of help, I too could be flying off to ConExpo and living the high life, because this guy's done it. He's been in the dark place and he's come out the other end. So, Steve, I really would encourage you to go public with that. Tell people about it, because it is a great story.
But also what it's doing by talking like that is allowing others to make them feel comfortable talking about it. If none of us talk about it, nobody else will talk about it, if that makes any sense. So more people are open about difficulties they've faced and talking about it, it will make others seem, okay, I can talk about this. And that obviously is a massive help. So, I think that it's talking's brilliant. And the great thing is it doesn't cost. No one can say I can't afford it because it's free.
Gary Muirhead has just said, the industry has this image that we're all roughy, tufty guys and big boys don't cry, but it's really okay to cry. I'm glad you said that, because I did it on the show yesterday. Yeah, we are only human, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. On a better note, says Mick Saunders, after I lost him, I watched each and every one around me on site and all around me. Only takes one to help someone else when you have an idea something is wrong. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a terrible way to make that discovery, but yeah, I mean, listen,
the big thing with what Michael said there, sorry, Mark, is and there was a comment from someone else about mental health courses from people that haven't suffered. Once you've been there and suffered, there's something in you that changes where you can see it easier in others, and actually you want to help others. And I think that is fundamental. The more people open up and talk, get any help they need, they will then see it in others and want to help others. It's part of my journey, recovery. Having a chat with someone, helping them, is the best feeling in the world after what went through. So I think the more of us can do that, the better.
Yeah, here's another point, and I again, this goes back. I obviously talk about this subject far too much. I don't know how people can give you a course that have never had mental illness, and I again mentioned this on my IG Live on Tuesday this week. I actually, when my first child was born, my daughter was born, we had a midwife came to the house and was, hold the baby this way, feed her that way, do this, do that, and really quite aggressive with it. And I in the end, I actually said, how many children have you had? And she went, none. At which point I threw her out of the house. I've calmed down a lot over the years, but how could you possibly do a mental health course if you don't know what it feels like?
Do you know what? Somebody, house builder in the Midlands, not national, family run, do a fantastic job. All the staff are well looked after, got about 500 staff, and they produce bloody good homes. I've been there and seen them. And one thing the head of HR says to me is it's very hard for the senior board directors to understand the importance of mental health on a site. And one of the reasons is none of them have been there. It's a bit like somebody trying to explain to me something like, I don't know, anorexia. I've not been there. I don't understand it. And I think that is one of the key things. People don't understand it. So as I think it was Steve said there, trying to get these courses delivered by people, robots, whatever you want to call them, there's no empathy in it. There's no thought in it. They're just sitting there reading PowerPoint or whatever. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with it. It's a bit like putting somebody on as a site manager, in my opinion, that's come straight from college or whatever, that's got no experience of actually being on site. It's never going to work.
As you can tell from my figure, my struggle with anorexia is a day-to-day battle. Not. Steve Williamson, I'm going to heap the praise on you with this one, Andy. This has probably been the best live so far. I thank you both for doing this, just letting everyone know that you're not alone. Thank you very much indeed for that, Steve. Jim Turner says it's the same old construction way of things. If something's not working, let's just throw money at it. It never works. Things need to change. More thought applied, not throw cash at problems and expect a miracle. Totally agree with that.
That goes back to the people making these decisions. They don't know what they're doing, or they wouldn't just be launching money at it and hoping it works.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say good morning to good morning or good afternoon. Good morning from Amir over in Pakistan. Steve Kozlak says, bang on, Gav. I'm going to save that one to the end, actually. Well said, says Steve Williamson. Gary Muirhead says, don't let the haters get you down, Stevie. You're doing a fantastic job. No one should put you down for chasing your dreams.
That's just quickly, mate. That's one thing that I've always struggled with. If you're doing well, I'm self-employed. If you're doing well, it always seems in construction, you can't openly be honest and say, I've bought a new push bike, motorbike, car, house, holiday, clothes. It's fun. I mean, maybe it's just the area that I grew up in, but if you were doing well and went out and bought something, you didn't really want to talk about it too much. Didn't go, oh, he's got loads of money, he's all right. Maybe it's just me. I don't know about that.
I'm going to, again, praise for you. Al Grierson over in Luxembourg. I've just been quietly following along, but this is another fantastic show. Thanks for all the insight. Andy is a great guest. Well, he was the best we could do at short notice. That's
short notice, yeah.
Andy, I know you've got a day job to get back to. I originally, just so everyone knows, I told Andy that I'd need him for 30 minutes. He's now been here for an hour and 20, so my apologies for that. I'm going to let you have the final word and let you tell people where to find you and everything else. But I want to throw this one up from Mick Norton. More smiling, less worrying, more compassion, less judgment, more blessed, less stressed, more love, less hate. Roy T. Bennett, the light in my heart. You know, that would make a fantastic tattoo if my wife would let me have another tattoo. But yes, I think that's a great point. Andy, you've been an absolutely splendid guest as always. I knew I could rely upon you to do that. Where can people find you? I mean, I tend to follow you mainly over on Instagram, but where can people find you?
Yeah, Instagram, I do quite a lot of stuff. It's at Andy Stevens. There it is, just popped up. I'm still on the tools. I've just got planning for a small house that I'm building as a charity build, giving percentage of the profits to charity. Plus, I'm obviously a strong advocate for mental health and work with brands like Bosch and Wienerberger and others. I just think we've got to remember we're in a bloody good industry. We love it. I don't think there's a better feeling than no matter what trade you are, the work we do, you know, is very rewarding. But we got a problem with mental health. Let's not be shy. Let's open up. Let's get around a table. Let's help each other. It's very difficult. A lot of people say to me, "What would you do?" I don't think it's I've got very firm views what I would do, but at the moment we're getting bugger all support from the senior people in government and these federations and all that crap. If a lot of small people like us start making small waves, hopefully one day it will turn into a big wave. But just when you go back to work this afternoon or tomorrow, if you're working weekends or next week, just be nice to your co-workers and ask if they're all right. So ask them twice. And don't be afraid to talk out. But let's not forget, it's a bloody good industry and I love it.
Isn't that a strange thing? This is going to be my final point because I really do know you've got to get back to do other things. Yesterday, I spoke about the fact that 4 men were killed at Didcot Power Station 7 years ago, and the investigation is still ongoing. So we have people dying in accidents. We have 507 people at least taking their own lives. And yet, in spite of all of that, we both still love the industry. Says a lot about what the industry has going for it, I guess, that we're willing to not accept, but put that to one side and say, despite all of that, it is still a great industry.
But look how many good people are in the industry. What you don't hear about, because inverted commas, it doesn't make good TV. Look at people like Band of Builders. Look at the work they're going in. Volunteer tradespeople giving up their time for nothing, traveling to the other side of the country to go and help someone in need from construction. Tradespeople that aren't charging OAPs when their boiler breaks down for, a repair or call out charge. There's a lot of great people in this. I've met loads over the years. I continue to do so every day. And I do love it. It's just that we've got a few problems. And I think one big positive of social media, we can come on platforms like this and talk about it. And you never know, there might be somebody from government that's watching it that might take away something and actually start actioning stuff. But we will get there.
That's a perfect note to end on. Andy, you've been an absolute star, as you always are. Everybody go and follow Andy over on Instagram and on LinkedIn and anywhere else that you can find him, because he is very, very passionate about this. And in actual fact, we did have a comment. Let's have a look. Not much bad language from Andy this morning. I love his passion. Yeah, no, I think he was very well behaved, actually.
I must say, Gary, to be fair, I've been very well behaved. The good thing is with social media, there isn't much legality about words you can and can't use, like when you've got a live radio show, but sometimes it ekes out. So
I was going to say, I only counted 2 bollocks, and I think that's acceptable in this day and age.
You don't want 3, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, when it comes to bollocks, you only want even numbers, I always say. Andy, go and do your good work, mate. Thanks ever so much for being here, and thank you for giving up so much of your time. You've been an absolute legend.
Anytime, Mark. And everybody, have a great day. Look after each other.
Cheers, buddy.
Take care.
Right, that's enough. This is the longest ever breakfast show in the history of mankind. An hour and 22 minutes. That was never the intention. I was hoping to be in and out in about 30 minutes. No such luck. But I think the subject is well worth that length of time. I'm just going to say very quickly, had a couple of comments come in late there. Our man Amira, I'm guessing that might be Brave. I'm not entirely sure. Thanks, Andy. Inspirational. Totally right. Can't read what that says. Jim Turner. Cheers, Andy. I wasn't much into mental health until my mate did herself in, but now I keep a keen eye on it. Yeah, absolutely right. Right, people. I'm going to love you and leave you. Get back to the day jobs. I say the same thing every day, and I said this yesterday as well. Look after yourself. Look after your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Take care of yourselves. Take care of those around you as well. And I will see you all again on Monday. No Saturday social this week, and no after show chat, because the entire show today has been an after show chat anyway. So everybody, go have a good day. Have a good weekend. I'll see you bright-eyed, bushy-tailed on Monday. Till then, all the very best.